Okay, good afternoon. I am Ento Budiarjo. Welcome to Monday Live. This is something we do every Monday. The profiles of the panelists are on mondaylive.org. Just a reminder that the views expressed here are personal and not of any company or organization. We're using the Zoom tools as normal, and this deck is on mondaylive.org. So is actually a link to the Smarter Stack and other things that may be of interest. So our focus this month is on using the Smarter Stack. So we're spending each Monday with one or two examples of how people are using it, and we have a couple today that should be interesting. And so this is really just the agenda. Continue on that, week number 3. And before that, as normal, I'm going to hand it over to Ken to have some comments on what he's doing on automated buildings. Ken?
Thanks, Ando. Of course, we've got our delivering smarter buildings issue is online right now. We're kind of following the Monday Live theme. That's been good. We're getting good response and good interaction in both LinkedIn and on our site. We're hard at our September issue, and we're themed it. It's evolving to smarter sustainability, decarbonization, and electrification. Provides new views, purpose, and our why. And since last Monday, we've added new purpose and why, and Anto's going to tell us more about that later. Another person Anto introduced me to virtually is Simon Sinek, and I'd never heard of this gentleman before. So I started poking through, and I found this particular TED Talk quite intriguing in discovering your why in life. So I thought that was kind of a fun one, since that's part of our, has become part of the stack. And we now have online our Smarter Building Decarbonized. That's been well received as well. Basically, the picture says it all. We just need to dial down the CO2. I think this is a change in the industry, and something that we definitely have to embrace. And my why is as a curator of change, is to raise awareness of reducing carbon for sustainability. Back to you, Anto.
Thank you, Ken. Over to Ken. Anything going on in your world, Ken? No, John? Anything going on?
Nothing much in a quiet week. Yeah, some really important news. Big news is late last year, Project Haystack worked with the National Renewable Energy Lab, Clockworks Analytics, Sky Foundry, Switch Automation, and put together a proposal for the Department of Energy grant. I can't tell you what a massive amount of work it is to do that type of stuff, but to really bring funding to help move to the next level of formality, validation tests, et cetera. And really happy to announce that we were awarded. So Project Haystack has been awarded a significant DOE grant that will cover 3 years of work in advancing the standard validation tools, et cetera. So that's really big news. We've got our hands full for the next 3 weeks to complete all kinds of paperwork as an awardee. So we're pretty busy here, even at this very moment. But this is a really big deal to advance the standard and metadata standards and the things industry needs to work effectively with them. So you can read the press release at that hyperlink, and if you drill in a little bit, you'll see the text shown below is the brief summary. There'll be more press announcements that we'll make once we get approval and all of that type of stuff. But this is a really important step. And I think it's, it further confirms things we've been talking about here of administration's focus on making buildings more efficient and really trying to help the different elements of our industry with different types of grants, programs, regulations, et cetera. So buildings have to get more efficient. We're on the front lines of doing that, and this is one important step.
Congratulations,
John.
John.
Yeah, well done.
I can only take a small, very small bit of credit. The team who put all that together did a tremendous amount of work.
Yeah, great stuff. For me, I keep on coming across this word endemic. And I was just sort of wondering what this means. We started this conversation on Mondays, obviously when COVID started, and there was always an assumption that it would end, and maybe they won't be. And so, other than the sort of the health part of the sort of concern, what does that entail for buildings and the living with COVID for forever potentially? So that's what's been going on in my mind. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that or have any other things to talk about.
Are you thinking of this from a perspective of change in our workflow processes, or this is just an observation?
Well, it's an observation that obviously impacts us individually in terms of how we go about our lives, but obviously it has a potential of impacting buildings and people returning back to buildings the way it was pre-COVID.
Antoine, we've learned to live with the flu, and half the population gets a flu shot every year, and has basically ignored the average death rate that is associated with the flu. Because COVID has had far more fatalities, unless vaccines and therapeutics really negate a lot of the fear associated with it. I think it will in the short term, because you're seeing businesses decide now not to go back, that we're planning to go back in the fall. They're now talking about going back, in January or next year. So yeah, I think there's no question it's going to have a short-term impact. Hopefully, between the vaccines and the therapeutics, that we'll learn to live with it, because I think endemic is the right word, and it's going to be, analogous to the flu. It's a cold. It's the flu. It's COVID. It's a virus, so we're going to have to learn to deal with it on an ongoing basis. But until the noise settles down and the number of deaths and the hospitalizations drops off substantially, I think it's going to affect people's decisions. And I think in general, people are going to wear masks a lot more than they ever have in this country.
Yeah, and I think to extend on that, Steve, is that, there was some concern that some of the IAQ and the quality of buildings and stuff was going to be a short-term focus, and that, the vaccine was going to rid us all and we'll be all fine and just go back to normal. I think the extension of that would be that things like indoor air quality and and cleanliness and cleaning processes and stuff, I think will become just more of the norm as well, right? I think it'll extend beyond what we thought was probably going to be a short-term
Yeah, I agree.
focus.
And obviously the question is, what does that do to our industry? And I'm not seeking for answers here, because I'm not sure any of us have any. But that was the thinking behind putting this up. Anyway, any other news or anything else anybody wants to bring up before we move on? All right. So last week we had Brian Turner, a really great session, and we've had subsequent discussions within the Monday Live group last week, and I've also had some interactions with Brian, and we've updated the stack, and it's very minor, but this is the updated version of it. There's essentially two changes. One is that we've changed the top layer from outcome to purpose. We actually spent quite a bit of time on last week discussing this. We had other words there. And the thinking was the outcome was a little bit academic. Purpose is a little bit more simple word. We tried some other words as well, including why. So this is kind of where we got to, and we'd love to get your people's feedback on that. The other part of it is that I'll to this part of it is that Brian brought up the sort of the why, what, why, how, what, which is from the Simon Sinek's Golden Circle. And so we've added these descriptions, which does two things. Why, first of all, it just sort of gives a little bit of a hint as to what the layer is all about. But the other sort of interesting thing in terms of what it does is it kind of allows us to map it to the Simon Sinek's Golden Circle, which is what he calls this: why, how, what, right? And the purpose being why are you doing something? Why are you installing some smarts? And then both the operations and the delivery are essentially hows, the hows of the implementation of that purpose. And then everything underneath it is essentially the what, the pieces that we're doing. I've had a little bit more back and forth with Brian, and it occurred to me that the way Brian was actually thinking about the Simon Sinek Golden Circle was slightly different to this, and that's worth sort of bringing up here. He was looking at it from the perspective of what Simon Sinek really sort of talks about, generally speaking, which is how you describe the why, how, what is really about your company. Why are you doing whatever it is you're doing? And then how and what. Whereas this stack is really a why from the perspective of the building owner. Why are you doing this? Why are you installing this system or expecting this smart systems? I don't know whether this is a problem or not. The sort of the thinking behind creating this stack is really very much based on the perspective of the building owner, right? So this is kind of the way we have it, but I'd love to sort of open it up for a little bit of a discussion. And then we actually have two guests to actually present their stack. So before we do that, any thoughts about this from the group?
Well, I would say from the building owners, I think having it from the building owner perspective is the right one, because it's the building owner who pays for the bills, pays for all of this. And I feel you should always be speaking to that audience, because to respect the fact that they're writing a check and they have a why, they're going to do it. And then you're going to help them understand the how in some cases. And of course, you may have a unique value proposition in the delivery piece for some reason, but certainly on the what side, that's for most of the people on this call, they have different elements that contribute to the why and the how. So I think I tend to think doing it from the owner's perspective is the right way to go.
Which is to emphasize Sinek's perspective, right? That you start with the why, which is the core piece, and you build on outside, and everyone kind of inverts that model. And technically, we tend to invert the model. So if you start from the building owner's perspective, that's starting with the why, and then building out from there.
Brian just put in the chat one and the same. Seeing a product and I don't know why the client will buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point, Brian.
Right.
If you don't know.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you could spin that and it still comes out in the same place. Yeah.
Any other thoughts? No. Being very quiet today, I can tell.
I like the direction it's going. I think the why, how, what is something we've been kind of avoiding, and to get it out and get it visible, I think is very positive. I think it's helped me understand better. So it'll be interesting. The other thing I think is great is the fact that we've got everybody using this stack, and every time they touch it, the stack gets stronger and better. So I think looking forward to today's presentations.
Just go back to that slide you had before this one, Anto, for a minute.
Well, this, you mean which one?
Yeah, that one. That's just the title. I think there's some subtlety in the title, right? That it's a tool used as a backdrop. And I think that's the key message here, that this is a backdrop for, it's in of itself, it's not a thing. It's a thing to be used as a backdrop to explain your stuff or your message or story or whatever it is. Which, you know, a tool's only as good as people using it.
The other thing that occurred to me is the one of the rationale of actually starting working on the stack was to convey the whole product, the whole sort of the concept of a whole product. And the thing that's important in trying to convey something as a whole product is the ultimate customer, right? It's his or her perspective that we're trying to
Speak to.
yeah, thank you. And I think the way I think about that is if you are a creator of this product X, right, that happens to be an app, right, and that's all you do, right? Without this, you'll be forgiven to think that your whole world is about getting it used by somebody, typically maybe the operation, and getting the data from somewhere. So you don't really get the context of the whole purpose of why your product is being used in the bigger picture. And so that's maybe another thing that gets lost if we move away from understanding that this is the end user's perspective is the most important here. So with that, I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to bring two guests. I'm going to bring them both in at the same time. So we have Pete Scanlon, I'm going to bring, and Rick Ralston. Where are you, Rick? There you go. So Pete is in his car in New Jersey Turnpike somewhere.
I did stop.
We thank you for that. Who wants to start?
Hi, Rick.
Rick.
I'm happy to go first, if that's all right with you, Rick. Oh, he's on mute. Can't hear him.
Go ahead, Pete. Rick is on mute
Okay.
anyway.
All right.
Share my picture. So as a progression of applying the Smarter Stack, I thought we could look at a project that our company delivered. Hard to believe it's actually more than 2 years old.
So Verdicity, we're a whoops, I gotta go backwards. We're a marketplace for smarter building solutions that all work together. We act as a systems integrator, often selling direct to customers to help them put smarter stuff in their buildings. So a couple years ago, the city of Kansas City was building a new fire station, and they had some pretty high goals for it. And I just wanted to share how we applied those goals to what essentially was the Smarter Stack, although that's not terminology we used at the time. So let's take a look. This is the project overall. I'm not going to read everything here. On the left-hand side, the goals. The city wanted the fire station, first of all, to be a healthy indoor environment for their firefighters. These folks go out into hazardous environments for part of their job. They wanted the place they come and retreat to and live in for 24, 48-hour shifts to be a healthy place. So that was the first goal. Second was for it to be a, they wanted to preserve water in addition to energy. Fire stations use a lot of water. And the third just high performing building. Energy was key then, and Kansas City has also been at the forefront of smart cities movement and measuring their impact for carbon emissions as well. So instead of looking at the components here, let's look at it on the stack. So the building was a brand new building, about 13,000 square feet, and it's a fire station. To illustrate here, I put the 3 goals that the city had across the top. And then we quickly, because it was new construction, we were working directly with the general contractor who had 12 or 15 other subs building this one fire station. And they had a lot of pieces going on. So let's just, essentially what we did in the planning for the project was we mapped from the top to the bottom and from the bottom to the top to kind of fill in all the pieces of the stack. So let's look at the physical layout of the building. There are bunk rooms in a fire station, there's bathrooms, common spaces, and then the apparatus bay, which is where they park the trucks and stuff. And that's very important as well. Close to the physical layout of the building are all the physical systems that were in the building. And we laid them out here in a certain order. We'll see how that stacks up in a second. Everything from HVAC, we mentioned indoor air quality, water systems. They wanted a lot of electrical detail, not just to do building level kind of meter reading, but all the way down to circuits for some major equipment, because that helped with a lot of the diagnostic work to do preventative and predictive maintenance. So starting with HVAC, we went with what turned out to be a fairly vertical stack, kind of self-contained, from 75F, who offers a lot of good stuff for buildings that don't have a BAS already, a master BAS already built into them. So there are a lot of disparate parts of the HVAC for this building, and we thought 75F was the best fit there. Of note, they use Haystack to tag their data, so that was a bonus. The next, whoops, I'm going to go backwards one. The next part I put up on the other side, which was meter reading and desire on their part to do utility bill monitoring. They wanted the building ready to be enrolled in demand response. So we went with an EMIS from THG Energy Solutions, which already had built that. So they have the interface with the utilities and the full utility bill monitoring software, et cetera. But that left a big chunk of systems in the middle, which were not picked up by either of those. So here we used, let me click. We built a stack with Voltron as the main backbone. And that allowed us to talk to all sorts of different systems locally. This is Voltron happens, the connections in Voltron all happen on site. But Voltron also can connect in the cloud. So examples of this are that not only is the Voltron backbone picking up all of these systems at the bottom that are underneath that directly into Voltron, the 75F stack is talking to Voltron on premise, and the EMIS is actually talking to Voltron in the cloud. So Voltron was this universal key to pull it all together. The data is all tagged in Haystack there as well. We've got SkySpark doing an analysis, exception analysis on top of that. That analysis can happen across multiple systems, which was really important. So there are sequences for the HVAC that include indoor air quality, occupancy, and even the status of some of the exhaust fans, which were not typically part of the HVAC data stack. So you can unify it and execute kind of an overlay to the HVAC through Voltron, and SkySpark informs all of that. On the delivery layer, there's been a debate here on Monday Live, what's the right use of the delivery layer? So I tried to answer both questions here. From a channel perspective, this was a direct sale from Verdicity to the owner. I mean, it was through a general contractor, but it was essentially to the city itself. But the delivery of the technology, the interface, is a single pane of glass that's available mobile, desktop, and kiosks that are in the building itself, so the firefighters can see the status of all of the stuff that's going on there. Then lastly, on the operations side for this project, the building is run by the city's facility management staff. In particular, a dedicated staff, or a piece of that staff that's dedicated to the fire department. But we also offered remote management as a service. So we're monitoring what's going on. We're monitoring some of the fault detection stuff. The alerts show up on our remote interface the same time the city can see them. But the city doesn't pay attention to this one building, just this one building. So oftentimes, some of the input that we can provide informs the staff of whether or not they need to roll a truck or not. So operations has two layers there. So this is the fire station kind of laid out schematically. I'm just going to show this. I tried to do a more detailed view of this, and this was kind of interesting to see how the 75F stack, kind of the pieces to that, those are all 75F tools. In the Voltron stack, there are kind of layers to achieve the different layers of the smarter stack. And it sort of worked there. And then I went further and tried to actually, I was trying to test the stack and see if I could actually physically represent what was in which parts of the building. And this got really, it looks kind of cool, but it's actually kind of messy. So just something I was trying, I figured I'd show it to folks. You know, when you're describing something schematically and what goes with what, it doesn't often line up with where it is in the building. So that was a limitation that I encountered. As opposed to, it's like, this is the as-built drawing, the schematic for the system. And if you zoom in, you know, I got tons of we delivered tons of detail to the fire station if someone wants to see what type of sensor was in which room and what's it connected to, et cetera. And, you know, that's a more, for construction, you know, that was more appropriate. So the smarter stack wasn't applicable there. I'm gonna go back, Anto, to the simple one, this one, and just pause and see if there's comments or questions.
Yeah. So Pete, this looks really good. I'm curious, had you had this as part of the, if you will, the sales cycle, do you think it would have facilitated discussions with the buyer? Because it is less complicated, and it gives just a clear description of from the bottom to the top or the top to bottom, depending how you want to look at it, as a tool, communications tool.
Yeah, great question. So the advantage with the city of Kansas City is that they already had a smarter building system for their portfolio that was about 12 years old. And we knew that our team had actually helped them build that using different tools in the past. So they understood what the purpose was. They didn't really care too much for the city's standpoint. They didn't care too much about the different layers here. But when we were working with the general contractor, this would have been huge. There were tons of communication challenges with all the other subs that are providing these different systems. You know, we were not the equipment provider for all these other systems. And there was all these questions about scope, like, what are you, the supplier of the equipment, doing? What is the systems integrator, which was Verdicity, doing? Where do the controls fit, et cetera? And this kind of picture would have really helped clarify that. We literally had 3 months worth of meetings trying to clarify scope with the other subs, and this would have really helped there.
Oh,
So
okay.
that was
Yeah, that makes sense.
Other questions or comments?
When
So, Rick-
sorry,
Go ahead.
Pete, when you said you tried to break it down into the further layers, were you doing that just purely as an exercise to see how far the table would work, or?
Yeah. So we found that like this. Whoops. If I go. Yeah, but this is kind of the in between where a lot of when you draw a box that goes across layers in the Smarter Stack, there are in fact components that one provider does that acts as in this case 75F has they have an app layer that does FDD. That's a different tool for them than their cloud, than their control unit that sits on site. So that was helpful even for us to explain to the people who are in the building, like what the different pieces are and why what happens to the thing on the site versus what happens in the cloud. And this was helpful a bit there. I think the interesting thing is that like here in the 75F box, those layers are layers within the 75F solution, but the 75F cloud doesn't host data that's not inside that box, right? So the data that's coming from these other systems across the bottom over here, that has to have a different data layer which has to have a different exchange layer on top of that. So that was helpful even just for us to sort it out. And then, like I said, when we were talking about it with the other vendors, including someone like 75F or THG who did the EMIS, we were trying to define like, here's what's in your stack, this is what's not in your stack, and where it sits, and that really helped with those conversations. So
okay,
the super detailed version like that was I was just trying to do that to see if it worked, but I think the layout of the building versus what fits underneath the verticals that are organized here, it's just too much to try to accomplish in one.
Yeah.
So Rick LeBlanc has asked to come on and speak a question, so I'm going to bring him on this. If you can just bear with us, Rick Ralston, for a bit, and then we'll continue. So, Rick LeBlanc, you are on, but muted as well still. There you go. We can't hear you. You're muted on on the microphone or something.
Hello.
No.
I can't hear if there's a question.
No, his microphone's not miking. Try again. Let's move on, and maybe we can come back if Rick can get this microphone.
How's that?
Yeah,
that's
there
good.
you go.
There it is. Yep.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Rick. Rick, now he can't hear us. Okay.
No.
Yeah, now we're working. Yes, go. All yours, Rick LeBlanc.
Rick did post a question in the Q&A if that's the question.
I can see that from here.
So his question is, what are the results for energy efficiency and water reduction? I think he wants to ask the question, what's behind the 3 boxes, the 1, 2, 3 on the purpose line?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so the results, if I go back one slide here, let's see. Oops. Oh, there we are. Yeah, so energy savings overall, this building uses only, what's the right math there? 32% of the energy that other public safety buildings use across the country, the average. It was a new construction, so we can't say a before and after for this one building, but significantly less than other public safety buildings, which are fire stations and police stations for the most part. The water savings is about 7%. The water savings was a rainwater reclamation system that takes the rain that falls on the roof, puts it in a tank underground, and then the firemen use that to wash the trucks. And turns out that washing the trucks in a fire station uses almost 10% of the water that the fire station uses. So they're saving almost all of that. And then healthy indoor environment, it basically almost 100% uptime for that. There were only a couple of times in the first couple of years when there were any alarms from the sensors, and those happened in the app bay, where we were measuring things like when they start the truck up before they open the gate, the doors, and that went off a few times. So that was really the only place where IAQ was any issue whatsoever, but goes
So
away
a comment
very
that
fast.
Ernest made on chat is that this brings to question if the sort of the outcome and purpose, and he's sort of asking whether in a way they're both needed, because one is what we're trying to do and one is the results. We did have result as being the top layer at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think those numbers fit right into the way we stated the purpose of doing the system. It just applies a number to it. So the city didn't have a specific number in mind for each one. As a matter of fact, they were trying to see how well the building could perform in order to set standards for other buildings in their portfolio. So
Yeah, I think you could easily add a KPI and descriptor if there
Yep.
was one that had already been agreed upon. So if the
Yep.
goal, if the target was a 10% water usage, you could show 10% goal, before you, and then afterwards you could update it to the actual. But yeah, you could
Yeah.
show the KPI.
So I'd like to bring Rick Ralston into this conversation with his stack. So Pete, if you could stop sharing, and Rick Ralston can share his stack, and we'll get that perspective and we'll continue this conversation.
okay, I think mine's off.
Yes, you're good. All yours, Rick.
All right. Just waiting for it to come up here.
Yep, you're up.
We're up. Okay, perfect. First of all, I've been attending Monday Live now for a year and a half, and it's been a fabulous forum that, and I appreciate everybody's time every Monday for taking an hour out of your day, and so last week Brian Turner provided a very interesting discussion on the stack, and that really led me to looking at our own application, Service Twin, and how that fits into the smart stack and into building automation in general. And so I had some fun with it, and so notice the first thing that starting at the bottom, the physical layer. We've all talked about an individual building, and the depth that you put into your stack was quite incredible. For me, the OT systems in an individual building is one small piece of the systems layer, I guess. In my case,
as I walk through this. So, what we are trying to do with the service twin is to effectively digitize the service and supply ecosystem. And so, physically, we start off with multiple building portfolios where those portfolios are provided by others, not by us. And we're looking at the data within those portfolios coming from systems, typically, the OT, IoT devices. Sometimes it's building automation. Often we're seeing more and more independent, indoor air quality or vibration analysis, or refrigerator temperature, and those kinds of applications that are not necessarily part of the automation system. In one case, recently, it was the tenants' refrigeration system in their kitchen and so forth that were concerned, not commercial refrigeration and so forth. And the other systems that we have an interest in is the side of things, so cost, time and materials, and so forth. So I've used Brian's convention of having the dotted line around things that we don't provide within the stack that are provided by others, and I think that's a good, a great convention. Thank you for bringing that forward. And I think the other thing that actually Brian and I talked about was security. And in my view, security is wrapped into each of the boxes in the system, whether it's our security or security of the OT systems, or for that matter, the physical security of the buildings. It's all sort of covered in the boundaries of those boxes, if you will. So as I look through the data, the key things that we deal with are obviously health and safety data. Is it safe to be in this mechanical room, and so forth. And then the really difficult data to get has always been the service intervention data. So if we are sending a truck to a site, what exactly did they do? What equipment did they touch, and so forth. And followed by, well, probably preceded by what I generically called asset properties. This could be asset tags, or for that matter, asset conditions, or asset, current operational conditions, temperature, and so forth, within the facility that we're interested in. And then the other difficult one is the cost, the time and materials, so the actual tool time in front of each piece of equipment, what materials were used, and so forth. And that is can be generated from our own platform, where our customers are doing the actual service interventions, recording time and invoicing and so forth. And so as we go up through the stack, I think that the two primary areas where we are exchanging data is, first of all, the data that comes from our which is that secure transaction, and also the integrated.
We're having problems hearing you, Rick.
Okay. I had a
Can you speak closer to the mic? Because we really can't hear what you're saying. Now you're frozen.
okay.
So I don't know what's going on with Rick.
I think it was a network issue.
Yeah, I think his network is bad. Yep.
So any thoughts so far, or you can go back to Pete, questions in the group? Kind of understand what Verdicity does now.
Thanks.
Okay.
While you're trying to get Rick back on, Pete, with in that slide deck you had, there was an original slide that you had, which you sort of showed the components and stuff, you know, as you had, I guess, traditionally laid it out, you know, in the first slide. That I guess that's your traditional perspective. Would you use the stack as an alternate to that, you think, or would you still do a summary?
Well, that's a good question. When we made, I'll see if I can put that back on the screen here for a second. Let me get, whoop, where's my?
Let's not do that, Pete, because Rick is back and we want to get back to him.
Good. Okay. Well, let me just, I don't know, just to answer it, like in the middle, that was normally how we present a project profile. And in the middle, it listed the components. There was just a list. And I think I would use the Smarter Stack as the background for that list. You know, that would be a nice place for it to be and fit there. So.
Okay, good.
So Rick, if you're back on, do you want to share your screen? And
Okay, I am sharing. Is it coming up?
not yet. No,
Yep,
now it is.
now.
Now it is. Okay.
Oh,
Good.
great. Yeah, I apologize. Internet.
You might want to try You might want to try stopping your video, Rick. That might save some bandwidth.
Because your audio is not coming across.
Oh dear. I have stopped my video. My audio is on. I apologize if that's the case. Can we see the screen? Can you hear me at all?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can see the screen. If we can just sort of highlight the solid boxes and going up, and then we can have a conversation.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So you know, top to bottom or bottom to top, the platform itself under systems is for managing the service interventions, asset properties, health data, and cost and time data. Changing that operation API through our mobile app, collecting that data. We have provide an open source mobile app that is extensible, and the collaboration aspects and this transactions and providing the asset property data. We do analytics or other aspects of analyzing the operational data that we're collecting. We leave that to others, and I think there's lots of talent in this group to deal with that. But so from a supply and service ecosystem, how we deliver our service. So we don't go direct to end customers. We tend to work with partners and work with others to integrate this application or our component of this overall stack into full solutions. So On the operational side, we are talking about digital.
Sure.
So, Rick, you're not really coming across.
Okay.
You may want to call in, but I think we should just continue with the discussion with, if you can leave it
Okay.
up. You can leave it up. Any
Perfect.
comments or questions from others?
I got a quick comment I'll add today. You know, we've been working on this and, you know, testing it against a number of, you know, use cases and stuff. I think what's really encouraging is from last week to this week, that, you know, people like Rick and Pete, it appears quickly and easily able to apply their offering on this, which speaks to, this is a helpful tool, right? This is a really helpful tool. I'm encouraged to see people who come into this who haven't spent the hours we may have debating it in private, able to lay their technology and their solution, how they're doing it on top of it. So just a positive comment. I think the stack is really working here.
Absolutely agree, John.
Yeah, I think that Brian's contribution around putting a dotted line box around things that the company's not providing makes a lot of sense, because that helps to answer the obvious questions that are going to arise. So that's a good change, good addition.
Yeah,
And
I
also,
have to.
I was going to say what Pete was doing by sort of making the relationships in bigger and smaller boxes and stuff. That's all great for that level of detail, as long as you start it at the
high level, right?
Started at the high level. Sorry, Anna.
No, I was just going to echo Steve's comment. I think what Rick's done here is great. I think the dotted context of what you're not doing is as much informational as to what you are doing, and I think that's a great add to the great add to the model. You know, solid lines we do, dotted lines are others type of deal.
There's a lonely looking arrow on the data layer. Not quite sure what the purpose of that is.
It was meant to show the integration, the data coming from the OT IoT devices through the integration API into the business process layers, and I think it's important in that we are not. It's a one-way arrow. We're not going into the control aspect of this stack, if you will, at all.
You know, that's a really good point, Rick, too. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, I think, Anto, about, you know, a lot of the stuff we've talked has been bottom up, but then there are the grid, you know, aware initiatives, which are controls focused top down type approaches. Having some directionality on your side, on your thing as to who you are, right? So, you know, Rick's saying, you know, we're a bottom up type approach and no controls. I think that's another good add to the stack as well. You know, which perspective are you coming from? You know,
and to keep the vendors, if you will, the service providers outside of the OT and still use that data.
Ken, Gina, Mark, thoughts, questions before we start to wrap up?
Yeah, I'm always pleased that everybody that uses it, everybody touches it, makes it better. And I think that's, more people will get to touch it, the better it'll be. And that was interesting. The idea of dotted lines for stuff you don't do, directions for data flow, all good stuff. I'm not sure how to capture that best. There's a lot of subtleties in these discussions and things that are decided, but unless you watch all of the series, you wouldn't get that. So we may need to figure out how to summarize the how to use the tools, or the next level of using the tools or something like that. Maybe somebody has some ideas on that.
Or maybe the way that the tool appears to you for your needs is the right way for you. So it's kind of okay. And we've seen different ways of using the tool that's obviously relevant to the creator of that particular stack. So maybe that's all right.
I
Yeah, I
think the best tool is the examples. I think just looking at how they did
Yeah.
it and why they did it is just huge. Like I've learned more about the tool from actually watching people use it than I understood from the start.
Yeah, I was just thinking that in addition to the PowerPoint, we might need some sort of a user documentation write-up. Hate to do that, but
Video, what are you talking about documentation? It's all video now.
right. But you know, like if Pete would be willing to share his stack, that would be a good use case to show the progression from the simple to the more complex as a use case. So people don't think, well, it's just a box. Well, you could take your box and show added detail in that, like he's done. I think that would and point out things like the you know, the dotted line for things that you don't do. So there needs to be some kind of discussion, however we do it, either via video or a written document. But I think
Maybe it's just tricks and traps and frequently asked questions.
yeah,
You know, kind of into that kind of category.
Mhm.
Again, I think the examples, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pluck out each one of these examples and put together a page on automated buildings that will lead to each one of these presentations. And I think the picture's worth 1,000 words. And when they look at it, they won't understand it. And the best way for them to understand it is to actually go and listen to the session.
good point.
I think there was a question there by Ernest Beck on the thing too about how can, if the people on the call want to submit their own examples, how would they do that? You want to submit it to here or to Ken, or I think it's a valid question.
Well, submitting it to here will be obviously okay for us. We'd love to hear. Submitting it to Ken is slightly different channel, but that would be okay as well. Depends what you're trying to do with it, I guess.
I don't know.
We have one more week, right? At least we have 2 more weeks.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so if Ernst wants to do this, he can submit it to a request to be on next week or the week after show. Monday Live, right?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Just great to have.
I'm kind of hoping that when folks write articles that this might be one of the ways they might start is because it will help them explain what it is their product is about and why they're trying to promote it on our site. So I think the stack is a very useful tool. I'd encourage them to use it. They don't have to use it, but yeah, if you want to make it part of your article, that's great. And I think you can start an open discussion on how you would like to use it, or I have no problems too with let's talk about the pros and the cons and even other directions and stuff. I was in Nicholas's article that he actually then brought up another stack that I hadn't seen before either. So we just keep relating all of this stuff, all these resources, and we keep growing and understanding better what we're trying to do. I think we're achieving huge. The stack has probably been the most useful thing I think that Monday Live has actually done so far.
I agree, Ken.
Okay, so with that, we are well past the top of the hour. So thank you, Pete. Thank you, Rick, for presenting your respective stacks. We'll have 1 or 2 or maybe more stacks next week when we come back on Monday Live. And with that, we'll wrap this, and video will be up in the morning, and hope you all have a great week. Thank you all.
Thanks very much.
Bye, guys. Thanks.
Bye.
All right.